everybody, and welcome to the fairly time-consuming project that I've been working on for the past while now. This is going to be a complete tier list. Well, this first part is definitely not going to be complete. It's going to be the projectile weapons, excluding explosive projectile weapons of Fallout New Vegas. The next part will be the explosives and all that, melee weapons, but I will be covering every single weapon in Fallout New Vegas in a tier list. Before we get into it, I want to wish everybody a good day or a good night, whenever or wherever you may be. Hope it's going well for you. And without further ado, let's hop into the rankings with the 357 Magnum revolver. It's gonna be a hard D tier right there. The 357 Magnum has fairly low damage, low magazine size. It's got a long reload. It's got dubious accuracy, low critical chance. It's overall a very basic starter pistol. Let's go over some of the hard statistics. For requirements, it has a gun skill requirement of 0, has a strength requirement of 3, does 26 damage per attack, has a DPS of 45.5, a critical damage of 26, times 1 critical multiplier, attacks 1.8 times a second, fires 1 projectile at a cost of 26 AP, 0.5 spread, uses 1 ammunition per shot, has a 6-shot magazine, weighs 2 pounds, and has a value of 110 caps. It has 200 HP. The 357 Magnum is overall just a very basic pistol. It does have quite a bit of item health, which is handy, and it is better in terms of practical applications than the 9mm pistol, especially when you take into consider its modifications, which are overall better, improving the damage and the durability. It has a fairly decent ammo selection, being hollow point jacketed JFP and 38 special, namely the JFP and the hollow point are going to help you out with targets depending on their DT. Unfortunately, its reload is finicky, and you can run into a reload glitch in VATS if you try to go into VATS too quickly after you reload the revolver. However, it is a good utility piece, allowing you to reload dash, and by extension, I think fly around. I can't remember exactly, but I know for a fact it allows you to reload dash. So it's a fairly handy utility weapon, but unfortunately as an actual gun, it is quite poor. Next, let's move on to Lucky, which is a solid B tier weapon. It is quite good. It is remarkably reliable when it comes to critical hits, which is to be expected given the name. It's got extremely low requirements for what it is and what it does. The ammunition for this gun is extremely cheap and extremely plentiful. It is highly durable, very reliable with critical hits, and deals an extreme amount of critical hit damage. Unfortunately, its sights are still subpar, and it is still just a 6-shot cylinder, and it suffers from the same reload glitch as other single-shot reload weapons suffer from. Its accuracy is improved from the 357 Magnum, although if you play with the true iron sights on, these sights are quite miserable. If we go by the hard numbers, the requirements are the same as a 357 Magnum. That is to say, 0 in guns and 3 in strength. It deals 30 damage per shot with a DPS of 82.5. It deals 30 critical hit damage with a critical hit multiplier of 2.5. It attacks 2.8 times a second with an AP cost of 17. Fires 1 projectile per shot with a spread of 0.3. It uses 1 ammo per shot with a 6-shot clip and a reload time, or a 6-shot magazine, and a reload time of 0.7. Weighs 2.5 pounds with a value of 1500 caps. Has an item HP of 225. If you're persistent enough, this gun can be unlocked quite early on in the game, just by getting a lockpick of 75 and looting it from the Bison Steve hotel safe. I will be taking into account how early in the game you get these weapons, by the way, in their ranking, which is why Lucky does make it to B tier. I personally don't enjoy revolvers in Fallout New Vegas. I find them to be fairly, mainly due to the magazine size, they're not reliable to use. And even if the listed spread is 0.3, a lot of the times it just feels like they don't hit the mark often enough to justify getting that close to an enemy. But Lucky is a very solid B tier pick, and it can carry you well into the late game if you have the right build for it. Now the next gun is the 44 Magnum revolver, C tier. It's a C tier weapon. I don't like using it. It's got pretty high damage though. It's a 6-shot magazine, however. For a revolver, the reload is fairly quick due to the speed loader. And whenever you do score crit, the damage is respectable. However, the actual damage that you deal while being high for a early to mid game revolver, it's not high enough to where you can justify, having it replace, say, the 5.56 pistol or that gun. It fires considerably slower than the alternatives, and the damage is not high enough to compensate for that. And the reload is indeed quick, but it's not quick enough to compete with, say, that gun, for example, or automatic pistols, which have both a higher reload, or a higher magazine, and a quicker reload than the 44 Magnum. It's also fairly difficult to find in the early game, and you're most likely to find it when you reach the gun runners. So it's also quite expensive to buy from the gun runners, as well as the ammunition being fairly expensive and rare compared to 357 Magnum or 5.56. To go over the statistics, has a gun skill requirement of 50, 5 strength requirement. It deals 36 damage per shot, has a DPS of 67.5, has a critical damage of 36, and a critical multiplier of 1. It attacks 1.9 times a second, and has an AP cost of 25. It shoots 1 projectile at a spread of 0.7, so not accurate at all. Even though it's got decent iron sights, it's a gamble whether or not you're going to hit something with it. Uses 1 ammo per shot with 6 shots in the magazine and a reload time of 3 seconds. Now, for those of you wondering, the reload time for the revolvers that load single shots, it lists the reload time for each individual shot being 0.7 seconds, so multiply those previous 2 reloads by 6 to get your real reload time. But this one is straight up a reload time of 3, weighs 3.5 pounds, and has a value of 2,500 caps. And finally, it has a item health of 250. It's worth noting it does have some fairly goofy modifications, that being the scope and the heavy frame. The heavy frame simply looks goofy, and the scope is negligible. It doesn't do much, especially with the spread. Like putting the scope on doesn't help the weapon spread. So overall, it's more usable on like a day-to-day basis than the 357, which is why it's in C tier. But again, that damage isn't enough to like break it out any higher, and if I'm honest, I'm pretty sure it's at the lower end of C tier. Now next up, the Mysterious Magnum. It's gonna be in B tier with Lucky there. Probably behind Lucky, considering how you get it and how you get it properly. It's essentially a better 44 Magnum. Not really that much better. It still has the same critical hit chance. It just has more damage, really. It fires quicker, but due to that 6-shot magazine, you can't really take advantage of that improved DPS. Again, it's got all the same problems as a 44 Magnum. Expensive ammunition that's not very common. And it does good damage, but you can't really take advantage of that, mainly due to its accuracy and reload. To go over the hard statistics, you require a gun skill of 50 to use it, strength of 6, damage per attack of 42, and has a DPS of 102.4, deals 42 critical damage with a critical hit multiplier of 1. It shoots 2.4 times a second with an AP cost of 22, fires one projectile with a spread of 0.5, uses 1 ammo per shot with 6 shots per reload, and a reload time of 3. Has a weight of 4 pounds and a value of 3,200 caps and an item HP of 150. Now, the Mysterious Magnum is fairly, I don't want to say difficult to get, but it takes a while to get it not legitimately, but in a good way. Obviously, you can come across the lonesome drifter and just kill him, but if you want to get the Magnum with him still alive and without failing, the quest talent pool, you have to succeed with a speed check of, I believe, 65 or 80, one of the two, I can't remember, but that's how you get the Mysterious Magnum in the correct way, I guess you could say. And it happens fairly late in the game after you get to New Vegas, and talent pool is admittedly a bit of an easy quest to miss. So this could pop up later in the game when there are other options that really outshine it. Alright, next up we have the 45 automatic pistol, which is an easy A tier for me. It's got acceptable accuracy, good damage, it's got great modifications, making it an extremely effective weapon from stealth with the appropriate perks and build, namely better criticals and the professional. You get those 2 perks and you modify it with a silencer, it becomes an absolute animal of a gun. The ammunition is extremely common as well, and you get plus P rounds, or potentially super, but plus B is fairly common and can help you deal with fairly tough targets. But when you complete Honest Hearts, this is a DLC weapon. You get it almost immediately when you get into the DLC. You can buy it from Joshua Graham, and from there the ammunition becomes available in the Capital Wasteland, and it is cheap and it is everywhere, as well as being available from Joshua Graham during the DLC. Now the hard numbers, it has a gun skill requirement of 25, a strength requirement of 3, deals 29 damage per shot with DPS of 79.8, deals 29 critical damage with a critical hit multiplier of 1, deals 2.8 attacks per second with an AP cost of 17, fires 1 projectile at a spread of 0.8, uses 1 ammo per shot with 7 shots per reload, or a 7-shot magazine I should say, has a reload time of 1.7, weighs 1.5 pounds, and is valued at 1750 caps with an item HP of 150. Now, the good thing about the 45 auto pistol, it can benefit from grunt, the grunt perk, so it gets plus 25 damage from there. The professional, which is I believe another 20% damage on a sneak attack, and then better criticals. Let me go on the wiki real quick and figure that out. Alright. So that's for the professional. That's an extra 20% damage for critical hits on that on the 45 auto pistol. And with better criticals, that's an extra 50% damage on a critical hit. And then with the grunt perk, that is an additional 25% base damage for the pistol. With this proper build, the 45 automatic pistol is an absolute monster from stealth. I would say better than the 12.7mm pistol, simply because of, depending on your playthrough, availability of ammunition and ease of repair and higher durability for the gun, as well as a better accuracy. Can't discount that the 45 auto pistol has much better accuracy than the 12.7mm pistol. So, moving along to the unique variant of the 45 automatic pistol, a light shining in the darkness. That is our first S-tier weapon of the list. A light shining in the darkness is an absolute animal of a pistol. I mean, an absolute beast. It is an absolute critical monster. It scores critical hits fairly reliably and often has an insane DPS, even when factoring in the reload, and has very nice base damage to boot. Unfortunately, it is not really that durable, I guess you could say. It's got more item health than the 45 auto pistol, but you fire more shots with the unique variant, so you tend to see that degrade quicker. But a light shining in the darkness is a weapon that will easily keep you safe all the way to the end game. To go over the hard numbers, it has a gun skill requirement of 75, a strength requirement of 3, does 33 damage per shot with a DPS of 144.4, deals 33 critical damage with a 2x critical hit multiplier, shoots 4.4 times a second with an AP cost of 15, fires 1 projectile with a spread of 0.55. One thing to note about the accuracy, if you play with true iron sights on, the light shining in the darkness has a gutter snipe sight, which I personally find easier to line up, but you may have trouble being precise with this sight. It has a weight of 1.2 pounds and a value of 4,500 caps and an item health of 250. This gun is truly a monster. It will like I said, it'll just keep you it'll carry you all the way to the late game. Be able to take out almost anything besides death claws fairly easily. The only downside is you get it at the very end of the Honest Hearts DLC, so it can be a little while before you get the gun, although there are ways to rush it. Honest Hearts is not that difficult of a DLC, and you get really good gear while in it, if you know where to look, so it's not that big of a deal. Next on the list is the 5.56 pistol from the Gunrunner's Arsenal DLC. That's an easy A tier right there. It is able to dispense reliable critical hits. The ammunition is extremely common, and it has very good ammunition types to go along with it. Being able to fire AP rounds out of a pistol is honestly a big deal. The reload is fast, it's relatively accurate, it's a fairly durable gun as well. Doesn't need to be repaired that often from what I remember. Overall, it's just a great gun that can last you a lot longer than you'd imagine. Normally it doesn't last people all that long because you get that gun like almost immediately after the 5.56 pistol, which kind of renders it obsolete since there are no modifications for the 5.56 pistol, which is a little unfortunate, but what can you do? But the 5.56 pistol can be found in the Mojave Outpost being sold by Tracy, I believe. So it's a relatively early game gun, well, a very early game gun, but is, like I said, an extremely versatile weapon that can keep you going into the late game with the appropriate perks and build, namely the ones that boost critical hit chance and damage, as it is very reliable when it comes to critical hits. The 5.56 pistol has a gun skill requirement of 50, 6 strength, has a requirement of 6 strength, deals 28 damage per shot with a DPS of 77. It deals 28 critical hit damage at a multiplier of 2. It attacks 2.8 times a second with an AP cost of 21. Fires 1 projectile per shot with a spread of 0.6. It uses the 5.56 round and uses 1 ammo per shot with 5 shots in a magazine with a reload time of 2.5. It weighs 5 pounds and is valued at 1,200 caps. Has an item health of 175. But the biggest thing about the 5.56 pistol is the fact that it uses the 5.56 ammunition, allowing it to use hollow point, armor piercing, or hand-loaded rounds. It is extremely versatile, able to take down pretty much anything that you will face quite easily up until like the mid-late game. And next up, that gun. That gun is an easy A tier. Above, honestly, probably not above the 45 automatic pistol, simply because the 45 auto is just, it's niche. It's so much better in its niche than that gun. Unfortunately, I can't really put it into S tier. It's a good gun, but it's not, it's not that gun, you know what I mean? It's not that guy. It's still a great gun to have, and it will keep you going for quite a while, but overall, it's just, like, it's not, it doesn't have that wow factor to push it into S tier. It's a very reliable gun when it comes to scoring critical hits and everything like that, but it's just, it doesn't have that punch, you know what I mean? It has a gun skill requirement of 50, a strength requirement of 6, deals 30 damage per shot with a DPS of 90, has a critical hit damage of 30 with a critical hit multiplier of 2.5. It shoots 3 times a second with an AP cost of 19, fires 1 projectile per shot with a spread of 0.5, uses 1 ammo per shot with 5 shots in a cylinder with a reload time of 2.5. It weighs 5 pounds and is valued at 1,750 caps with an item health of 225. Now that gun is kind of not an Easter egg, but it's like a holdover from Fallout 1 and 2, that being the 223 pistol. It's also a bit of a nod to Blade Runner. Now, next up is the 9mm pistol. Kind of garbage. It's pretty crap. It's going right to D tier. Not a good gun. It is a basic little starter pistol. Barely deals any damage. I mean, it fires pretty fast, and you get 13 shots in a magazine, but the modifications that you can get for it don't really improve the weapon, like, at all. Especially that goofy scope that you can put on it. Like, it just, an enigma of a gun. I don't know, it's cheap though. Like, it's a really cheap pistol. You get it for free, and the ammunition is everywhere. That's kind of the draw. Probably the only reason you'd use it too. It's not even accurate. To go over the hard numbers, it has a guns requirement of 0 and a strength requirement of 2. It does 16 damage per shot with a DPS of 50, critical hit damage of 16 with a critical hit multiplier of 1. It shoots 3.1 times a second at an AP cost of 17, fires 1 projectile per shot with a spread of 0.7. It uses 1 ammo per shot with a 13-shot magazine, has a reload time of 1.7 seconds. It weighs 1.5 pounds with a value of 100 caps. It weighs 150, it has 150 weapon health. Like, it's just a weird gun. Like, the modifications are the extended mags and the scope, and they don't improve the gun, like, at all. They just kind of make it weird, like, even weirder to use. It's not, I don't know, there's no area outside of, like, Prim that I would say this gun is going to be viable. You'll find better guns almost immediately after the 9mm pistol. Possibly even better pistols almost immediately after the 9mm pistol. And now we can move on to our unique variant, the Maria. It has probably a B tier weapon between the Mysterious Magnum and Lucky. I don't think it's better than Lucky. You know what? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. It's gonna be, I'd say they're probably even. They're probably pretty even guns, because the thing that drags Lucky down is the fact it's a revolver, and you can get reload glitched with it. Maria's just like a bullet hose. But Maria has very low requirements, cheap and plentiful ammunition. You can get it quite easily, fairly quickly. Oh, I forgot to tell you where you can get that gun. That gun can be found in Novak, being sold by Cliff Briscoe. Maria can be pried from the hands of Benny when you kill him. With that out of the way, the ammunition's cheap, it fires very quickly, high critical hit chance, and it does, decent damage on a critical hit. And and it does that fairly reliably. And the reload's fairly quick, and you get 13 shots in a mag. Overall, it does less damage than Lucky, but you get a much higher DPS, and it looks sick. It looks incredible. It's a beautiful gun. It's kind of a toss-up whether or not you'll be able to get Maria before Lucky. It depends on how you go about things, but the hard numbers. Maria has a gun skill requirement of 0. Has a strength requirement of 2. Deals 20 damage per shot with a DPS of 75. Has a critical hit damage of 20 with a critical hit multiplier of 2. Attacks 3.8 times a second with 15 AP cost. It shoots 1 projectile with a spread of 0.2. That's actually pretty accurate. Uses 1 ammo per shot with a 13-shot magazine with a reload time of 1.7. It weighs 1.5 pounds with a value of 999 caps and has an item HP of 200. Yeah, like I said, Maria's just all overall like a good gun. It's solid. I wouldn't trust it to like bring down everything and anything, but it's a dependable little gun. It's light, concealable. I think it classifies as a holdout weapon, but it's just a good gun, man, overall. Alright, next up we have the 10mm pistol, which I rank as a B tier weapon. The reason for this, it's pretty much just a worse version than the 45 automatic pistol, with similar modifications and a similar playstyle when it's fully modified. That is to say, it's a sneak attack weapon. It's an early game gun with relatively common ammunition, so this is to be expected. It's reasonably accurate, not particularly durable. Overall, just a decent gun for what you use it for. To go over the numbers, it requires a gun skill of 25, a strength requirement of 4. It deals 22 damage per shot with a DPS of 60. It deals 22 critical hit damage with a critical hit multiplier of 1. It will fire 2.8 times a second with an AP cost of 17. It shoots 1 projectile with a spread of 0.8. It uses the 10mm round, using 1 ammo per shot with 12 rounds in a magazine, reloading in 1.3 seconds. It weighs 3 pounds with 750 cap value and has an item hit point value of 80. All in all, just a thoroughly average gun that definitely needs modifications and a specific playstyle to work properly. Next up is the weathered 10mm pistol. This is a solid B tier gun. I'm gonna put it probably above Maria, since it's so dominant in its playstyle in the early and mid game, and you get it directly at the beginning of the game. It's a free gun from the Mercenary pack. It's pretty much better than the 10mm pistol in every single way possible. You get it just a little bit earlier. The 10mm pistol you get, the earliest you can get it is at the Goodsprings stash above the Goodsprings source, but like I was saying before, the weathered 10mm is a Mercenary pack weapon, so it's a freebie at the beginning of the game. Just overall better damage, better DPS, and it's unique amongst other uniques in the sense that it can accept weapon modifications. I believe it is the only unique weapon in Fallout New Vegas that can do this. That makes it a solid B tier pick, but it is outshined in its niche by the 45 automatic pistol. Now to go over some hard numbers. The weathered 10mm pistol has a gun's skill requirement of 0, but a strength requirement of 4. It deals 24 damage per shot with a DPS of 66. It deals 24 critical hit damage with a critical hit multiplier of 1. It will fire 2.8 times a second with an AP cost of 17. It will shoot 1 projectile with a spread of 0.8. It consumes 1 ammo per shot with a 12-shot magazine and a reload time of 1.3 seconds. It weighs 3 pounds and has a value of 1,200 caps. It also has a item hit point value of 110. Like I said, overall, just a better 10mm pistol in a lot of meaningful ways. Moving along to the 12.7mm pistol. This is a low B tier weapon. I'd say it's probably between Maria and the Mysterious Magnum in terms of usability. It's definitely more usable than the Mysterious Magnum, but the Maria is just, dead reliable, cheap and everything. The main thing that kills the 12.7mm pistol is its accuracy and durability. It's really bad in both respects. Bad enough to where by the time you come across it, it's probably not worth switching away from the weathered 10mm pistol. And if you desperately need a replacement for that 10mm, just go to Honest Hearts and get the 45 automatic pistol. Another issue with it, it only carries 7 rounds in a magazine, and you cannot increase that at all. While this isn't really an issue with a 45 automatic due to its improved accuracy, with the 12.7 you will see more misses at close range than you would expect, and having that extra ammunition is more valuable. Another thing, depending on your playthrough, 12.7mm ammunition may be a little bit more difficult to come by. This obviously depends on who you side with. It also has very high requirements. Most stealth builds will not have 7 strength, so you will not be able to use this gun effectively at any point. You can cut that down to 5 with weapon handling, but even then, you might be running with 3 strength, and you'll have to invest a perk and an implant to use the 12.7mm pistol effectively when there's just straight up better options for you. Now to go over the hard numbers, it has a gun's skill requirement of 75, a strength requirement of 7. It deals 40 damage per shot with a DPS of 110. It has a critical hit damage of 40 with a critical hit multiplier of 1. It fires 2.8 times a second with an AP cost of 17. It fires 1 projectile per shot with a spread of 1.1. It uses the 12.7mm round, consumes 1 ammo per shot with a 7-shot magazine, and a reload time of 1.7 seconds. It weighs 3.5 pounds and has a value of 4,000 caps and an item health of 80. This is really just, it's difficult and quite frustrating to use at any distance beyond point blank. 1.1 spread is particularly foul, if I'm honest, and especially considering that a lot of the time you won't be running with 7 strength on a stealth build, which is the best build for the 12.7 pistol due to its modifications. It's difficult, to put it lightly. Alright, moving along to the unique variant of the 12.7mm pistol, the Little Devil. This is a pretty good gun. It's an A tier weapon. I'd probably put it between that gun and the 5.56 pistol. That's mainly due to when it comes along, and I don't really like bringing DLC exclusivity into a game like this, since pretty much everybody has all the DLCs at this point, but it is a Gunrunner Arsenal exclusive, unique. And I think that carries just a little bit of weight to place it behind that gun, especially because you don't get armor-piercing rounds with a 12.7mm caliber. It deals a lot higher damage than that gun, but overall, it's it's the same niche, but it fills it about the same. I mean, I'd prefer using that gun over Little Devil, mainly because of the accuracy too. It's not an accurate gun, just like the 12.7mm pistol. It's very usable, but it does still suffer from that. And you also can't modify it just like that gun. So what you see is what you get. The reason it's so much higher than the base version, despite the base version having a fairly dedicated niche, is because because it doesn't occupy that very competitive one-handed silenced pistol niche. It can be used in a completely different manner very effectively, as it does have a very high critical hit multiplier of 2 and good base damage. And depending on your playthrough, 12.7mm ammo can or may not be common, or it may be extremely common, so it's worth having around. It's definitely not better than a light shining in the darkness, but that's a very good pistol. So to go over the numbers, Little Devil has a gun skill requirement of 75, a strength requirement of 8, deals 45 damage per shot, and has a DPS of 146.3. It has a critical hit damage of 45 with a multiplier of 2. It shoots 3.3 times a second with an AP cost of 15. It fires 1 projectile with a spread of 0.9. It consumes 1 ammo per shot with a 7-shot magazine and a reload time of 1.7 seconds. It weighs 3.2 pounds and has a value of 16,000 caps, and has an item HP of 120. That's also another thing that kind of brings it down a bit. Buying it can be a bit of a pain in the neck sometimes, this all depends on your actual playthrough, but I find that by the time you have the caps to comfortably afford Little Devil and other uniques that you might want for your playthrough, you might already have better alternatives, depending on what DLCs or actions you perform prior to. Alright, next up we have the Hunting Revolver. I'd say this is a pretty high B tier weapon. Probably, for me personally, I'd put it below the 10mm pistol and Maria. Simply because I don't really use it a lot. That niche that it occupies as a medium range hand cannon, you can use the cowboy perk and really trick out its damage, but realistically speaking, you have better uses for the 45-70 round, which is, in all actualities, extremely rare regardless of your playthrough. It's not something that, that you'll have ammunition to feed when you get it, because the earliest you can get it is in Repcon Test Center, out of the room with the very easy locked safe. And at that point in the game, you will barely be finding 45-70, and by the time you come across a reliable source of 4570, you'll be able to buy a brush gun or medicine stick. And those are better uses for the ammunition. It does deal great damage. There's no getting around that, but it does have fairly high requirements for a one-handed weapon, although not as high as the 12.7mm family. It doesn't really deal a lot of critical hit. It won't crit reliably without a dedicated critical hit build. It's not really a very versatile gun. It fills a niche that is fairly competitive, and it does so in a way that's strange, in the sense that you need the cowboy perk to make this gun, work. But you can, you're gonna have to use the cowboy perk on the brush gun and stuff like that too. So it kind of gets outshined by its stablemates. I can see this being used when you want to have a backup gun in 4570, but that's about it. Now to go over the hard numbers. It has a gun skill requirement of 75, a strength requirement of 6. It deals 58 damage per shot with a DPS of 87. Deals 58 critical hit damage with a critical hit multiplier of 1. Fires 1.5 times a second with an AP cost of 31. Fires 1 projectile with a spread of 0.35, which again sounds really good, but then you realize that the rifles that fire 4570 are 0.03. It uses the 4570 round with uses 1 ammo per shot with a 5-shot cylinder. It takes 3 seconds to reload, weighs 4 pounds with a value of 3,500 caps, and has an item hit point of 110. Okay, next up is a fan favorite, the Ranger Sequoia. Yeah, this thing's pretty badass, man. There's no getting around that. It's a badass hand cannon, and it's really cool, and that puts it way high in A tier. But unfortunately, that doesn't mean it outranks a 45 automatic pistol, because the Ranger Sequoia is not the most practical of weapons, I'd say. You just I don't know how to put it. You can't get it. You can't get the gun reliably. There are 2 ways to get it that I remember in the base game. Well, 3 technically. If I remember correctly, there's 3 ways. First way is you reverse pickpocket Chief Hanlon. You use the reverse pickpocket trick, where essentially you pickpocket everything off of him. You pickpocket something back into his inventory, wait an hour or a day, and then the gun should be in his inventory, and then he can pickpocket it. Or you wait for him to commit, suicide after he's found out, and then you steal it. And I press this point, you steal the gun off his body. If the NCR Ranger that responds to this catches you in the act, the NCR will become hostile. The third method, you can sometimes loot it off veteran Rangers. So it's a very late game gun, and the 2 ways to obtain it earlier in the game are finicky at best. So that really tanks it. Otherwise it'd be probably above the 45 auto, maybe very low S tier, because it's just so cool looking. It's just a beautiful, beautiful weapon. Let's see what my notes say about the Ranger Sequoia. Yeah, pretty much what I just said. It's a bitch to get. It really is. That's pretty much what kills it. Other than that, it deals incredible damage. You lose the sight, right? You lose the scope, but you get better spread than the hunting revolver. So it's a bit of a trade-off. Overall, it's a better more versatile revolver than the hunting revolver, especially if you use, if you turn off true iron sights to make long shots. Let's go over the hard numbers. It has a guns skill requirement of 75, a strength requirement of 6. It deals 62 damage a shot, with a DPS of 104.6. It deals 62 critical hit damage with a multiplier of 1.5. It shoots 1.7 times a second, with an AP cost of 30. It fires 1 projectile per shot with a spread of 0.1. Uses the 4570 round, using 1 ammo per shot, with a 5-shot cylinder and a reload time of 3. It weighs 4 pounds, with a value of 1200 caps and an item health of 150. Now, I'm just going over the wiki to make sure I got it right. Yeah, the 3 ways to get it are off of chief handling, you know, pickpocket, or stealing it after he kills himself, or NCR veteran rangers. So this gun is an absolute pain in the neck to obtain. Unfortunately, the playthroughs that would most like to use it, you know, NCR playthroughs, getting it legitimately, you know, there's a good chance the NCR will become hostile to you. You know, getting caught pickpocketing or stealing it from Chief Hanlon, well, his body, or killing a veteran ranger and taking it that way. It's all a little bit, you know, iffy. Ironically, a Legion character will probably wind up with the Sequoia, in all likelihoods, and then probably sell it. But moving right along to the police pistol, this is a pretty mid revolver. I'd say it's better than the 44 Magnum revolver, but it's just overall kind of a novelty. I really like using it personally, but it's not like a good revolver at all, really. You can get it kind of early through Dead Money, but you know, you have to complete the DLC to bring it out with you. It deals pretty mid damage, like it's okay for what it is. You know, it's just a revolver, 6-shot magazine. It's not really a critical hit monster, but when it does land a critical hit, trust me, it hurts. You know, you're not gonna get the same level of critical hit chance, maybe, but the damage, it deals like 15 additional bonus base damage for a critical hit. So when they do land, it's pretty good, and you can build a character to land reliable critical hits, but it takes a lot of effort. And that's kind of where this gun shines, in that. But overall, if you've already made a critical hit build, just use a light shining in the darkness, or even Little Devil, or the, you know, 5.56 pistol, or that gun. There's just so many other alternatives, and the hoops that you kind of have to go through to get the police pistol don't make it worth it. So to go over the numbers, even though I love using this revolver for no reason beyond I think it's cool, you know, it's just not a good gun. It has a gun skill requirement of 0, a strength requirement of 4. It deals 30 damage a shot with a DPS of 60. Lands for 45 critical hit damage with a critical hit multiplier of 1. It shoots 2 times a second with an AP cost of 19. It fires 1 projectile per shot with a spread of 0.5. It utilizes the 357 Magnum round. Again, this is why I put it a little bit higher than the 44. The ammunition is a lot more common, and you get better variants, typically. It fires 1 ammo. It uses 1 ammo per shot with a 6-shot cylinder and a 3-second reload. It weighs 3 pounds with a value of 1,000 and has an item health of 225. that's another plus for it. It's got a very high health. And another negative, though, it does not accept any modifications. Alright, so moving swiftly along to the silenced 22 pistol. This one, I think, will probably surprise some people. I would consider it, you know, a C-tier weapon, a high C-tier weapon probably. Most likely above both the revolvers and C-tier. Mainly because of its niche as a holdout weapon. A fairly decent silenced pistol, you know, that you can trick out with perks, and I'm pretty sure if you get the right build with gear and perks, you can guarantee a critical hit with this gun every shot, or something insane like that. That's not to say it'll deal a lot of damage, you know, every shot in those critical hits, but it will do enough to where it's like, you know, worth it. You know, worth using as a regular gun. It's got like very low requirements. It's a very early game weapon. You get it right from Chet, and they're dirt cheap, and 22 LR is extremely cheap, and I'm pretty sure you can make it fairly easily, although that's a mechanic I don't really use in the game. You know, reloading benches, but I'm pretty sure it's a very cheap ammunition to manufacture. Overall, like, for what you're gonna do with it, that is to say, like, you know, sneak attack criticals all the time. It is incredibly good at that niche. It's, you know, dead reliable in that. You know, you can fire off one shot, get a sneak attack critical, and then the second shot, due to the high multiplier, could very well be another critical hit, and then kill the enemy outright. It's really, it punches above its weight when used properly. Obviously, you know, you don't go around using it like a regular, you know, pistol, but just the fact that it satisfies that niche so well, I think places it in C tier, like the top of C tier. Right now anyway, I kind of forget what else is in C tier, but it's definitely not better at doing that than the 10mm pistols, so you know, that it can't go higher than those. But let's get into some hard numbers. It has a gun's skill requirement of 0, has a strength requirement of 1, which is great. It deals 9 damage a shot, that's right, 9. Has a DPS of 31.5. It deals 18 critical hit damage with a critical hit multiplier of 3. It fires 3.5 times a second with an AP cost of 17. It fires 1 projectile with a spread of 0.5. It uses the 22 LR round with a 16-shot magazine that reloads in 1.7 seconds. It weighs 3 pounds with a value of 80 caps and has an item health of 100. Overall, like I said, it's just really common, really early game weapon. It has a niche that you don't need to buy extra modifications to start using right away, like the 10mm pistols that you kind of have to like luck, you know, RNG yourself into a silencer to use in that niche properly. You can just do this right out of the gate, and it's very effective at what it's set up for, you know. So now we're going to move on to rifles. You know, long guns, big rifles, man. Alright, first up is gonna be the venerable anti-material rifle. You know, coming right out of the gate with a absolutely iconic rifle. This is an easy S tier weapon. I'd say probably above the light shining in the darkness. Mainly because I find myself using it more often. Since there is more, there's generally more opportunity to use a long-range rifle like that as opposed to a light shining in the darkness. Typically, if you pull out your sidearm, things have kind of gone pear-shaped already, you know, and it works well for that. But I guess what I'm saying is the anti-material rifle is just a bit more versatile with really ridiculous ammunition variations, and I'm pretty sure best in slot damage. I might bump it up to S+ tier since it's such an iconic and game, essentially a game winner, you know what I mean? Although I think, you know, yeah, I'm gonna bump it up to S+ tier since it's just, you know, such an utter machine. Like, it's just, you know, it's a game winner at that point for long range sniper builds, you know, literally best in slot. So it's just an animal, you know, one-shot deathclaws, one-shot deathclaw mothers with explosive rounds. It's insane. I think you can one-shot the legendary deathclaw if you build for it properly, but I don't think I recorded that, so don't quote me on it. And the modifications, if you have Gunrunner's Arsenal, the modifications for it are extremely useful. They do everything that you'd want it to do. They, you know, it reduces the noise so you can use it from medium range from stealth, lowers the weight by 7 pounds, and boosts your rate of fire by 20%. It is when it's fully modified, it's, you know, great. It's literally best in slot, nothing even comes close to it. It does have fairly high requirements though, at a gun skill of 100 and a strength requirement of 8. Though it deals 110 damage per attack, per shot. It has a whopping 49.3 DPS. It deals 110 critical hit damage with a multiplier of 1. It fires 0.4 times a second with an AP cost of 65. It fires 1 projectile per shot with a spread of 0.015. It uses the 50 BMG round or 50 MG round. It uses 1 ammo per shot with 8 shots in a magazine and a reload time of 2.5 seconds. It weighs 20 pounds and has a value of 5,600 caps and has an item health of 95. I can't sing this gun's praises enough. I use it in pretty much all my playthroughs. Like my most recent one, I purposely shelved it because I wind up using it all the time. Like it's just a powerhouse. There's no getting around that. So next up is the Assault Carbine. This one's gonna be, you know, a high A tier, probably top of A tier. You know, above the 45 auto pistol because it just, you know, you use it in so many more circumstances. It's just really versatile. It shoots through soft targets like nothing else. It's got, when it's fully modified, it's got ridiculous rate of fire, like a ridiculous rate of fire. I'm pretty sure you can get extended magazines for it as well, yeah. It does, but it only increases the magazine capacity by 6 rounds, which is not great because it has an insane fire rate. So you're looking at a maximum magazine size of 30. But, you know, the trade-off is it's really light, you know. It's just a regular two-handed rifle. It's got lower requirements than, you know, an LMG or a minigun or anything like that. But when it comes to raw damage output, you have other choices that you really want to consider. Another thing to take into consideration is the fact that it uses a 5mm round, which is pretty common. You can buy it in bulk pretty much anywhere. But overall, It's not a best in slot choice. It will get you out of a lot of jams, but it's not really my go-to, if that makes any sense. Like, I like using it, but if I need something like crazy DPS, I will use the LMG, or on rare occasions I'll bust out a minigun. But again, those do weigh significantly more than the assault carbine. Now to get into those hard numbers, it has a gun's skill requirement of 75, a strength requirement of 3. It deals 13 damage per shot with a DPS of 156. Has a critical hit damage of 13 with a critical chance of 0.06. Fires 12 times a second with an AP cost of 20. It fires 1 projectile per shot with a spread of 1.2. Uses a 5mm round, using 1 ammo per shot, with 24 rounds in a magazine and a 2-second reload time. Has a weight of 6 and a value of 3,950 caps, with an item health of 750. You will see that condition drop fairly quickly, really only because it fires so quickly. Realistically, this is, best in slot for like soft targets. If you're just going for a two-handed rifle build, there's going to be a lot of situations where you just pick the assault carbine over the LMG simply because of the weight. Honest Hearts comes into mind when you have that weight requirement to get into the DLC, but that's neither here nor there. Next up, the automatic rifle, or the Browning automatic rifle. It's a B tier weapon, I'd say. It's not useless, like, I wouldn't dunk it down to C tier, although it does have some pretty large flaws, but putting it in B tier, in terms of usability, I'd probably place it, considering its niche in the game, I'd plop it probably below Maria and above the hunting revolver. Like, the assault, or the automatic rifle has really good damage. You can use it, right? It's got high requirements though. It's got great per shot damage, kind of mid, DPS, and it uses a 308 round as opposed to like 5mm or 5.56, which is a bit, it could be problematic. Typically not. 308's fairly common, but it's something to consider. It's also not really durable. The weapon health is fairly low. The biggest issue with it utilizes old automatic weapon spread. So to kind of get into it a little bit, in unpatched, release Fallout New Vegas, all automatic weapons, I think all weapons actually, automatic weapons in particular, had much higher spread values. And, they patched this out down the line, but the automatic rifle, since it was a DLC weapon, never got patched. And for that matter, all automatic weapons in DLCs use the old weapon spread values, or weapon spread model. So they're going to be a lot less accurate when compared to base game weapons. So let's get into those hard numbers on it. It has a gun skill requirement of 100 and a strength requirement of 8. It deals 40 damage per shot with a DPS of 240. Like I said, it's got great per shot damage. Has a critical hit damage of 40 and a critical hit multiplier of 0.18. It fires 6 times a second with an AP cost of 35. Fires 1 projectile per shot with a spread of 2.5. Uses a 308 round, firing 1 ammo per shot, or using 1 ammo per shot with a 20-shot magazine with a reload time of 3 seconds. Weighs 16 pounds, bit of a heifer, is valued at 4,500 caps with an item health of 200. I'm not gonna say it's unusable, right? But it's not a good, it's not like a first string, weapon. It's not an A-team weapon, you know what I mean? Moving swiftly along to the battle rifle, which I kind of struggle to place, to be honest with you. It's good, right? Like, it's really, it's like a dedicated mid-game weapon, but once you kind of like get out of the mid-game, there's just a lot better options. Even in that same tier, like, you could just go with a trail carbine or a brush gun. You typically get the battle rifle at the same place you get the medicine stick. Or you could just stick with a hunting rifle and have a 10-round bolt action rifle that you could have a scope on. Or stick with like the service rifle and fire like AP rounds. It's thoroughly a very underwhelming rifle. It's got good damage, I'd say. You can't really fault it for that. It's just, I don't know, it's got an 8-round mag, although it reloads fairly quickly. It's durable, I'll give it that. You don't really have to worry about repairing it too often. But, I mean, honestly, I'd probably put it between the hunting revolver and the 12.7mm pistol. That's probably a good place for it. I find myself using it because I think it looks cool. It's an M1 Garand. It looks pretty sick. But realistically speaking, you have better options out there, and honestly, this might be a case where the unique variant might be lower than the non-unique. Not to spoil, well, I did spoil it, but I'm not going to spoil the reason why. But honestly, I think the battle rifle is a better all-around weapon than this machine, and you'll find out why later on. But overall, the battle rifle is pretty mid. It's a mid-tier, mid-game weapon that gets outclassed fairly quickly. You'd probably want to use a marksman carbine instead, and live with slightly lower damage but with an increased fire rate and lighter ammunition if you're playing on hardcore. It's just, I don't know, underwhelming, I guess you could say. It's not bad enough to be C tier, but it's definitely not good enough to be anywhere near A tier. So to go over the numbers, it has a guns requirement of 75, a strength requirement of 6, deals 48 damage a shot with 92.6 DPS, deals 48 damage in a critical hit with a critical hit multiplier of 1. It fires 1.9 times a second with an AB cost of 25. It fires 1 projectile per shot with a spread of 0.55. Oh yeah, it's not the most accurate thing in the world, by the way. It utilizes the 308 round, consuming 1 ammo per shot with an 8-shot magazine that reloads in 1.9 seconds. It weighs 9.5 pounds with a value of 1,500 caps. It has an item health of 300. Alright, next up is this machine. So, where does this go? I'd say directly behind the battle rifle. This machine is statistically better in every regard to the battle rifle. More damage, better DPS. It has both better damage and a higher fire rate, slightly, and has a lower AP cost, slightly less spread, and more durability. But the reason why this is behind the battle rifle, and you know what, fuck it, it's gonna be behind the 12.7mm pistol too. Do you wanna know why? It is a pain in the ass to obtain, and it is very underwhelming for the hoops that you have to go through. So, to give you a brief summary, you have to complete 3 or 4 unmarked quests from Contreras, the NCR quartermaster in Camp McCarran. So, not only is this a very easy set of quests to miss, it is very buggy. There are often times where dialogue will appear out of order, and if you select it by accident, not knowing what it is, it will lock you out of the quest rewards. This has to do with price, I believe it. If the dialogue option, where is price again, or like if the dialogue comes up where you're asking about price, right? Yeah, here it is. So where was I supposed to meet price again? If you click that, it will soft lock you out of getting the quest. Completing the quest may also lock you out of Contreras as a vendor. That is a bug, it's not supposed to happen. There's also the chance that if you do everything right, you just won't get the quest reward, and Contreras won't be a vendor anymore. And the quests ultimately boil down to busy work for Contreras. Like, they're not good quests. So overall, it's, below the battle rifle, I'd say, since you can just buy the battle rifle, and that's that. But let's get down to the numbers for this machine if you want to obtain it. And I've been using it in my main playthrough right now, my first NCR playthrough, and it's alright, I guess, It's outclassed by a lot, and I kind of keep it around for aesthetic purposes and as a way to utilize 308 rounds, but that's beyond the point. It has a gun skill requirement of 75, a strength requirement of 6. It deals 55 damage per shot with a DPS of 117.9. It deals 55 critical hit damage with a critical hit multiplier of 1. It fires 2.1 times a second with an AP cost of 22. Fires 1 projectile per shot with a spread of 0.5. Uses the 308 round with 1 ammo per shot used in an 8-shot magazine. It has a reload time of 1.9 seconds, weighs 9.5 pounds, has a value of 2,800 caps, and an item health of 600. It is a pain in the ass to obtain. I'll tell you that right now. The only appeal it had previously to Gunrunner's Arsenal was that it was like a one-of-one. It was a completely unique weapon with no non-unique counterpart. But really, there's no need to get it anymore. If you really want it, just console command that bitch in. No guilt. Alright, moving along to the first of what I would consider joke weapons. That is the BB gun. Easy F tier, completely unusable. Literally unusable gun. No damage, no critical hit damage. It's not durable. It's inaccurate. No DPS, low fire rate. It's just a piece of shit. I don't know what to tell you. The fact it's even in the game is incredible. It's like the rolling pin, you know what I mean? It's so bad. It's literally, you just, whatever, right? You know what I mean? You just can't use it. I'm pretty sure you can't even, no, you can. Okay, never mind. I thought you couldn't fire an entire magazine without the gun breaking, but you can only fire 2.5 full magazines before the gun breaks. But to go over the numbers. Has a gun's skill requirement of 0, a strength requirement of 1. It deals 4 damage per shot with a DPS of 6.2. Deals 4 critical hit damage with a critical hit multiplier of 1. It fires 1.5 times a second with an AP cost of 28. Fires 1 projectile per shot at a spread of 0.5. Uses the BB, which is not the easiest ammo to find, typically. Fires 1 ammo per shot with 100 shots in a magazine. It has a reload time of 3.3 seconds. Weighs 2 pounds. Is valued at 36 caps. With an item health of 50. Garbage gun. Alright. Moving swiftly along to the unique variant. That is the Alabine Kid LE BB gun. Bottom of B tier. It's still a BB gun, you know, but it has a ridiculous critical hit modifier. I'm pretty sure the only other gun that outclasses it for critical hit damage is the anti-material rifle, or something insane like that. You can really jazz up its sneak attack damage with associated perks, and it kind of boosts its critical hit chance too with the right perks, which is good because it still only does 4 damage per shot on a non-critical hit. So it's not really the most practical weapon out there at all. Would I use it on a regular basis over like anything else? No, not really. It's kind of like, if it comes along at the right time, it could be useful, but it's not good for long range engagements. If you're going to be using it at close range, you might just want to use a pistol. It's got a weird niche to it, but I mean, you can't, it's usable. It's not like a garbage gun, you know what I mean? You can use it. So to go over the numbers, it has a gun skill requirement of 0, a strength requirement of 1, deals 4 damage per shot with a DPS of 6.2. Here's where it really comes into its own. It deals 70 critical hit damage with a critical hit multiplier of 1.5. It attacks 1.5 times a second with an AP cost of 28. Fires 1 projectile per shot with a spread of 0.5. Uses BBs with a 100-round magazine, firing 1 ammo per shot, and a reload time of 3.3 seconds. Weighs 2 pounds and is valued at 500 caps with an item health of 100. So this can be found in Field's shack, by the way, just lying around. So coming up next is a very reliable gun, the brush gun. I'd say on its own, it's a B tier weapon. I'd say it's probably above Lucky. I'd say it's the first gun to knock Lucky off its B tier throne. That's mainly because it's, you know, very high per shot damage. Unfortunately, you don't get any really useful modifications like a scope or anything like that, which is okay, you know, because it already does exceptional single shot damage. Barely has any spread. It does use the 45-70 round, which is kind of rare, but overall it's very useful for medium to long range engagements from stealth or, even in straightforward combat, it deals enough damage to still be useful in that. Unfortunately, it's a single shot reload gun, which means if you try to enter VATS too early after the animation is completed, you will glitch your character into a broken animation, which can be very frustrating and may even cost you, your character. So keep that in mind. Let's go over the numbers. It has a guns skill requirement of 100 and a strength requirement of 6. Deals 75 damage per shot with a DPS of 92.3. Has a critical hit damage of 75 and a critical hit multiplier of 1. Fires 1.2 times a second with an AP cost of 33. Fires 1 projectile per shot with a spread of 0.06. Uses the 45-70 round, using 1 ammo per shot out of a 6-shot magazine. Each round takes half a second to reload, so 3 seconds overall to reload it. Weighs 5 pounds with a value of 4,900 caps, with an item health of 150. Overall, I'd say it's a very good, very versatile weapon. The peep sights can be kind of frustrating, so I'd recommend using it with the true iron sights turned off. Now moving along to the unique variant of the brush gun. That is Medicine Stick. This is an S tier weapon. There is no getting around that. It deals exceptional per shot damage. I'm pretty sure out of all lever guns, out of all lever guns, it is best in class damage, best in slot. And it can jazz it up with the cowboy perk. I am fairly sure the anti-material rifle doesn't have any dedicated perks like the medicine stick, so it may even be best in slot single shot damage if you build right for it, although that's debatable. But it's great at medium to long range with a very low spread. Unfortunately, it doesn't have a scope, and the iron sights can be relatively frustrating to use at anything beyond close range. So I'd recommend turning true iron sights off and just using the crosshair. It deals great critical hit damage because of its base damage. Doesn't have a critical hit modifier, like a multiplier though, unfortunately. So you kind of have to force that with finesse, 10 luck, in the right outfit. But it is a great rifle. It'll take down pretty much anything in 1 to 2 shots. Unfortunately, it's very expensive. 20,000 caps expensive, or more, depending on your barter skill. But it's well worth it. Well worth it, I'd say. So to go over the hard numbers, has a gun skill requirement of 100, has a strength requirement of 6, deals 78 damage per shot with a DPS of 108, has a critical hit damage of 78 with a multiplier of 1. It fires 1.4 times a second with an AP cost of 31. Fires 1 projectile with a spread of 0.06. It uses the 45-70 round, uses 1 ammo per shot out of an 8-shot magazine, and has a reload time of 0.5 seconds per round. It weighs 5.5 pounds with a 20,000 cap valuation. Has an item health of 200. Yeah, overall this is a great rifle. Can't really go wrong with it. Now next up is the cowboy repeater. Now this one's going to be kind of a strange one, I'd say. definitely, I would honestly put it above the battle rifle, but below, probably below the automatic rifle in terms of usability. I mean, maybe you know, fuck it, I'll put it right below Maria. The cowboy repeater has a special place in my heart. It is a very early game weapon. You can get it as early as Prim. Typically you find it around Nipton though. Has very low requirements. It deals alright damage per shot and has a slightly above average critical hit multiplier though. So you can get fairly reliable crits out of it. Its modifications though are what really keep it competitive. So you get the maple stock, which decreases its weight, the long tube, which adds 4 rounds to the magazine, up to, I believe, 11, and then the custom action, which boosts the rate of fire by 20%. So you get fairly ridiculous DPS out of the gun at that point, with very good accuracy, with good iron sights, with an extremely common ammunition type that has good variations, or good unique ammunition. Overall, it punches well above its weight for far longer than it really should, and I'd say you only really replace it when you get to gun runners and either buy a trail carbine or a brush gun. That is, if you're using exclusively lever action rifles. Me personally, a lot of playthroughs I replaced a cowboy repeater with a service rifle. And then I bridged a long range gap with a hunting rifle. But if you want to only use lever guns, or you don't like, you know, using hunting rifles in every single playthrough, you know, you just keep this in your back pocket, and it, you know, it can act as a semi-automatic rifle and fill that niche, right, of a semi-automatic rifle with a good ammunition capacity and a medium to long range rifle as well, with good spread and decent damage, especially critical hit damage. So to go over the hard numbers, right, it has a skill requirement of 25, a strength requirement of 4, it deals 32 damage per shot, has a DPS of 54.5 or 54.2. It deals 32 damage in a critical hit with a critical hit multiplier of 1.25, which doesn't sound like a lot, but trust me, it feels like a lot when you're using it. It fires 1.7 times a second with an AP cost of 27. It fires 1 projectile per shot with a spread of 0.06. Uses the 357 Magnum round. Uses a 1 ammo per shot with 7 shots in the magazine. Has half a second reload time per shot. Again, be careful when using this gun in VATS. After a reload, it could cost you your life. It weighs 5 pounds with an 800 cap valuation, with an item health of 120. Yeah. This is honestly my go-to rifle. It's just great, honestly. There's no getting around that, you know, you just get it, don't really think about it. The modifications are pretty easy to find. You can trick it out with perks, you know, like Cowboy. It's just a very versatile and very good weapon. And now we can move along to the unique variation, the long carabine. I'm gonna drop that probably to this machine territory, Why is that, you may ask? Because it's statistically better than the cowboy repeater in every single way you could imagine, and has a scope on it, which you can't even get on a cowboy repeater. Well, you either have to kill Corporal Sterling or reverse pickpocket him. So getting it is really a task. There's no way to get it easily if you're in an NCR playthrough. You can't complete a quest and it's given to you, or you find it out in the world or anything like that. If you get it, it's useful. Don't get me wrong, it's a very good, very useful weapon. But getting it is tedious and not really for every playthrough. Can require a lot of save scumming. Just not really a fun process, and it's not something many people would even know to do. You know what I mean? It's kind of an obscure way to get it. If you could buy it or get it as a quest reward, this would easily be an A-tier weapon, but unfortunately not. So to go over the hard numbers, it has a gun skill requirement of 25, a strength requirement of 5. It deals 35 damage per shot, with a DPS of 75.3. It deals 35 damage on a critical hit, with a critical hit multiplier of 1.5. It fires 2.2 times a second, with an AP cost of 24. It fires 1 projectile per shot. With a spread of 0.05. Still uses the 357 Magnum round. Uses 1 ammo per shot, with an 11-shot magazine, with a reload time of 3.3 seconds for the whole magazine. It also reloads significantly different than the cowboy repeater. It reloads like the Lincoln's repeater or a BB gun, making it much more useful in VATS. It weighs 5 pounds with a value of 1,500 caps and has an item health of 150. Literally, if you could get this in a normal way, yeah, it'd be an A-tier weapon. But unfortunately, that's not how it is. So here we are. Moving swiftly along to the hunting rifle, A-tier weapon, above the 45 automatic pistol, but probably below the assault carbine. This is just a classic sniper rifle. It has its niche and it does it very well. It's only outclassed by dedicated sniper rifles. Even then, you can make a case to keep it due to better item health and DPS than a lot of dedicated sniper rifles. It's got great modifications, that being extended mags, custom bolt, and the scope, essentially tricking it out with better fire rate, 10-round mags, and a scope. So, great sniper rifle. Even when it's bone stock, you can use it as such. My only gripe with it is that about the same time you get the hunting rifle, you get Paciencia, the unique variant from Cliff Briscoe. Sometimes you can get the unique hunting rifle before the regular hunting rifle, but even then the hunting rifle can be fitted with a scope and its unique variant cannot. So let's go over some numbers. It has a gun skill requirement of 50. It has a strength requirement of 6. It deals 52 damage per shot with a DPS of 49.3. Has a critical hit damage of 52 and a critical hit multiplier of 2. It fires 0.9 times a second and has an AP cost of 40. Fires one projectile with a spread of 0.01. Uses the 3008 round. Uses 1 ammo per shot with a 5-shot magazine and a 2-second reload. Weighs 6 pounds with a 2200 cap value and has an item health of 300. Yeah, all in all, just a solid sniper rifle. And now let's move along to the unique variation, Paciencia, or patience in Spanish, I guess you could say. I'll put it in A tier. I'd say probably above the 5.56 pistol, but below Little Devil and that gun. Maybe between the two of them, actually. No. I want to put it below Little Devil. The main gripe that I have with Paciencia is the lack of a scope and the 3-round magazine. It is statistically better than the hunting rifle in every way, besides those two regards. It has very good critical hit damage, it has great critical hit stats, double the damage in critical hits, and double the chance for a critical hit. Same spread, you can't really get lower than 0.01. But those two drawbacks of the magazine and the lack of a scope keep it out of S tier. If it was scoped with a 3-round mag, that would probably bump it all the way up to the, probably above, above everything in A tier. Including its non-unique counterpart. As it stands, Paciencia is just not really versatile, and a lot of the times I'll find myself just simply keeping the hunting rifle and then trooping out with that because it's just more versatile with its scope, better magazine, and much faster fire rate. That's not to say Paciencia isn't useful, it is. Unfortunately, I don't think it's better than the hunting rifle in most circumstances. It's got its own niche that is extreme long range, or not extreme long range, but long range or medium range attacks from stealth. But again, the lack of a scope hinders that niche. So let's go with hard numbers. It has a gun skill of 50, strength requirement of 6, deals 55 damage per shot with a DPS of 65.1, has a critical hit damage of 110 with a critical hit multiplier of 2, fires 1.2 times a second with an AP cost of 35, fires 1 projectile per shot with a spread of 0.01, still uses the 308 round, using 1 ammo per shot with a magazine of 3, reloads in 2 seconds, weighs 6.2 pounds with a 12,000 cap value and an item health of 350. Alright, next up is the light machine gun. The LMG, the light machine gun, is a very easy S+ tier gun. It is best in slot, two-handed, automatic rifle. Insane DPS, very common ammo. It's accurate enough. You get it quite early, and really it's just it's a lighter minigun. Like I said, it's pretty much best in slot DPS for a two-handed automatic weapon. That's not a big gun. It's durable enough to where you don't have to worry about repairing it constantly. 5.56 ammo is probably the cheapest and some of the most common ammunition in the game. It does consume the ammo quite quickly, but you can alleviate that by using VATS to a degree. Overall, the LMG is just something that you can fall back on pretty much whenever you need to. Like Deadwind Cavern, you can just go through and kind of steamroll all the death claws in there. You do need a little bit of luck when it comes to the Deathclaw Mothers, because they can pretty much one-shot anybody outside of power armor. But for the most part, the LMG is just best in slot, you know? You can't really get around that. Now let's go over the hard numbers. It has a gun skill requirement of 100, a strength requirement of 8. It uses the 5.56 round. It deals 21 damage per shot, with a DPS of 252. It has a critical hit damage of 21, with a multiplier of 0.08. It fires 12 times a second, with an AP cost of 18. Fires 1 projectile per shot, with a spread of 1.5. It holds 90 rounds in a magazine, with a reload time of 2.2. It uses 1 ammo per shot. It weighs 15 pounds, with a caps value of 5,200, and has an item health of 800. You can increase the magazine size to 200 with the expanded drums modification, which is honestly a bit of a must. Because sometimes you might go through most of a mag to kill a tough enemy, depending on distance and, other factors. But with 200 rounds in a drum, you won't be really caught out during a reload, which is exceptionally fast, by the way. Let's move it along to the Bozar. Bozar is a B tier gun, I'd say. It's, I don't know, probably below Lucky in terms of usefulness. Honestly, maybe even below the weathered 10mm pistol in terms of usefulness. There's a few reasons for this. The Bozar kind of pops up at a weird time during the game. You buy it from the Gunrunners vendor, and it's really like a worse LMG. It's got higher DPS, but a much lower magazine. I think it's only got like a 25 round mag or something like that, maybe a 30 round mag. But it's got higher DPS but lower damage. It has a scope for some reason, even though it's fairly inaccurate. Overall, it's in the same niche as the Assault Carbine, which has better DPS and is lighter and overall, more moddable. And the LMG, which is just better, The Bozar is just a weird gun, which is unfortunate because it makes a return from Fallout, I believe, 2. Looks like Fallout 1 and 2, but overall it just, it's not exceptional. It's not something that you'd go out of your way to buy. Oh yeah, you get it at the same place as the light machine gun, the Gunrunners vendor. And there's really no reason to buy the Bozar over an LMG. Like, at all. Especially considering how much it costs, which is 20,000 caps. So let's go over the numbers. It has a gun skill requirement of 100, a strength requirement of 8, and it uses the 5.56 round. It deals 19 damage per shot, with a DPS of 285, and a critical hit damage of 19, with a multiplier of 0.07. It fires 15 times a second at an AP cost of 18. Fires one projectile per shot from a 30-round magazine with a spread of 0.75 and a 2.2 second reload time. It weighs 15 pounds, 20,000 cap value, with an item health of 800. It's not great. Oh, here's something I had no idea about. Here's a little bug. The grunt perk added by the Honest Hearts DLC does not affect this weapon due to the content from the two separate add-ons being unable to interact with each other. So, literally just a worse LMG in pretty much every measurable way. I wouldn't recommend buying it at all, really. Alright, our next contender will be the Marksman Carbine. Probably right below the Assault Carbine. The Marksman Carbine is a semi-automatic magazine-fed rifle, and it does great DPS for what it is, great damage per shot. It's essentially like a service rifle on steroids. Its main value is, its ability to pick apart enemies. It's got very good weapon spread, and you can essentially hit shots on the fly pretty much wherever you want. Like, say, my favorite thing to do with this and its unique variant is to cripple the arms, so the weapon, the enemy is using kind of just flies away, or to shoot their weapon, wholesale, and then essentially pick them apart with a Marksman Carbine. It's really good at that. It's extremely versatile. You can use it up close if you need to in VATS. And obviously at mid to long range, it's incredible. It comes stock with a scope, and I'm pretty sure it doesn't have any modifications. I can't remember, but I'm pretty sure it doesn't. So there is that. But overall, just a very versatile and effective weapon. So to go over the numbers, the Marksman Carbine has a gun skill requirement of 100, a strength requirement of 4, which is incredible, an ammunition type of 5.56, deals 24 damage per shot with a DPS of 136, has a critical hit damage of 24 with a critical hit multiplier of 1, fires 5.7 times a second with an AP cost of 14, fires one projectile with a spread of 0.04, and a magazine of 20 rounds with a reload time of 2 seconds. It weighs 6 pounds and is valued at 5,200 caps, with an item health of 400. Just a solid all-around gun. Can't really go wrong with it. You get it typically at the gun runners. I'd recommend going there and buying a Marksman Carbine and LMG. If you're doing like a grunt playthrough, you know what I mean? But moving along to the unique variant of the Marksman Carbine, All-American. I'd say that's an easy S tier, probably above both the Medicine Stick and a Light Shining in the Darkness, but below the Best in Slot weapons of Anti-Material and the Light Machine Gun. All-American is, a great weapon. It's essentially just a Marksman Carbine, but better. Better DPS, better damage, pretty much the same accuracy. You get the same 24 round magazine though. you do also get more magnification out of the scope. Has a lower AP cost. It's in general just a better marksman carbine, and depending on what you do in the game, it's possible that you will wind up with the marksman carbine or the All-American before the marksman carbine, the standard variant. You know, you use it pretty much the same way. When somebody gets close, you spam them in VATS, and from medium to long range, you just pick them apart. You know, shoot the weapon, and then take them apart at your leisure. So going off the numbers, it has a gun skill requirement of 100, a strength requirement of 4. It uses the 5.56 round. It deals 26 damage per shot with a DPS of 156. Has a critical hit damage of 26 and a critical hit multiplier of 1. A fire rate of 6 shots a second with an AP cost of 13. Fires 1 projectile per shot with a spread of .035. Very accurate gun. Has a 24-shot magazine with a reload time of 2 seconds. It weighs 6 pounds and is valued at 5,900 caps with an item health of 400. Now that's another thing. You really don't have to worry about repairing the All-American and Marksman Carbine too much. It's pretty good. Alright. Next up is the service rifle. This is definitely a B tier weapon. I'd probably put it right up there with the cowboy repeater. It's like the semi-automatic magazine-fed version of the cowboy repeater. It's on the surface level a early weapon or early game weapon. You know, ostensibly it's got lower damage, kind of a low mag. But the thing is, it's extremely common. You know, you're given one at the Mojave Outpost, or alternatively, you can kill the NCR soldiers in Prim and take theirs. It's fairly durable, and where it really shines is in its modifications. You can improve its rate of fire by 30% with the upgraded springs, and improve its health by 50% with a forged receiver. It's got next to no weapon requirements. It's essentially like a miniature marksman carbine when you fully trick it out with the modifications. It's shocking how well it actually performs, especially when you run up against a stronger enemy and you can just load AP, you know, and kind of chip them down that way. It's not that accurate, but it gets the job done. It's definitely, I'd say, better for practical reasons than the battle rifle. I mean, yeah, the battle rifle is cool and everything, but you lose a lot of magazine size, and it's, in general, just like a step up that, you know, you might not actually feel like it's that much of a step up, if that makes any sense. But enough of that. Let's go over the guns, the numbers of the gun. It has a gun's skill requirement of 25 with a strength requirement of just 2. It uses the 5.56 round, deals 18 damage per shot with a DPS of 75.6. Has a critical hit damage of 18 with a critical hit multiplier of 1. Fires 4.2 times a second with an AP cost of 15, quite nice. Shoots 1 projectile per shot with a spread of .55. It holds 20 rounds in a magazine with a reload time of 2 seconds. Uses 1 ammo per shot. It weighs 8.5 pounds and is valued at 540 caps with an item health of 400. It's also worth mentioning that if you trick it out with the requisite perks and traits, you can really get this thing firing very quickly and doing some substantial damage. That being, namely, the one chief perk, Grunt, really elevates this thing to a position where you can comfortably use it throughout, your entire playthrough until you come across either a marksman carbine, which should probably just replace with the unique variant of the service rifle anyway, the survivalist rifle as plus tier, easy. Honestly, probably above the anti-material rifle. I'm gonna toss that right up at the top. The survivalist rifle is just an absolute machine. It deals insane damage, great DPS. It uses, depending on your playthrough, what could be a more or less common round than the regular 5.56. It uses 12.7mm rounds, which if you're doing an NCR playthrough is everywhere. You can buy it in bulk from the Hoover Dam. It is very durable. It is extremely accurate, fires quickly, and it hits very hard. And it doesn't have insane requirements like the like the anti-material rifle or the medicine stick or anything like that. You get it quite easily if you know where to go and where to look in the Honest Hearts DLC. It is a DLC weapon. Overall, it's literally just best in slot. I use it every time over the All-American, over a marksman carbine, over any other semi-automatic gun. This machine, not even a contest. It's literally the go-to, you know what I mean? And it benefits from the Grunt perk, which is an insane damage boost. It's like 20 or 25% damage boost. And then you got other minor damage boosts like Lord Death, Bloody Mess, that sort of stuff. And it's just where you can get situational damage boosts like Black Widow or Confirmed Bachelor or Sneering Imperialist or Fight the Power. No, Fight the Power is just a damage threshold and critical hit buff. Like Sneering Imperialist. Not to mention all the damage boosts you can get against certain creatures. The Survivalist Rifle quickly becomes just the single most dependable and reliable gun in the game. Hands down. If you're in a jam and you're doing a guns build character, just pull it out and start blasting, and whatever's in front of you will just melt away. It's also up there because it looks sick, and the story behind the rifle is great. It's a really touching story told by journal entries in the Honest Hearts DLC of Randall Clark, the survivalist. So that's enough of that. Let's go on to talk about, I gotta talk about the bent front sight, which is intentional. Instead of lining the front sight up like you normally would, you'd line it up off the right post. Other than that, it's a phenomenal weapon. So the numbers. Has a gun's skill requirement of 75 and a strength requirement of 4. 4 strength requirement, that's a big deal. Means pretty much even if you're a stealthy character, right? If you're primarily a sneak attack, like a sniper, you can still pop up this survivalist rifle. And you're probably going to be running with weapon handling perk. So that's going to be down to a requirement of 2. so you can use a survivalist rifle with ease, even as a low-strength character. It uses the 12.7mm round. It's the best use of the 12.7mm round, actually. It deals 48 damage per shot with a DPS of 187.2. Has a critical hit damage of 48 with a critical hit multiplier of 1. It fires 3.9 times a second at an AP cost of 20. Fires 1 projectile per shot with a spread of .08. It has a 10-round magazine and a reload time of 2 seconds. Uses 1 ammo per shot. It weighs 8.5 pounds and is valued at 5,400 caps with an item health of 500. I can't sing the praises of this gun enough. It's quite simply best in slot, best in class. You use it on almost every build. Sure, it only has a 10-round magazine, but the reload is so quick. You still get, a good effective DPS out of it. It's just great. If you somehow haven't used it before, I recommend using it. Alright, next up is the Humble Sniper Rifle. This is an A-tier weapon. Above the hunting rifle, I'd say. And that's for one simple reason. Well, a couple. It's statistically better than the hunting rifle, for one thing. Has a higher critical hit chance. And it can be silenced. It can be silenced. So that takes it from a long-range critical hit machine to a medium to even close range sneak attack critical weapon. And essentially you can use it with more playstyles than you would be able to than the hunting rifle because it's unsuppressed. It's a very versatile gun, hands down. Does great, good damage, great zoom. It is a bit delicate, you gotta worry about its condition quite a lot, which is unfortunate. However, you make up for that. You can modify it, I believe, with carbon fiber parts, a suppressor, and I don't think you get extended magazines. It's just the two, the suppressor and the carbon fiber parts. So essentially you drop the weight by 5 with the carbon fiber parts down to 3 pounds. And you suppress it. But overall, you get it fairly easily. You can get it either at the 188 from the weapons merchant, and hopefully get some modifications off of Alexander, or you go to Gunrunners and buy the whole kit from there, ideally. So let's go over the numbers. It has a gun skill requirement of 75, has a strength requirement of 6, it uses the 308 round, deals 45 damage per shot. It has a DPS of 86.8, critical hit damage of 45, critical hit multiplier of 2. It fires 1.9 shots a second with an AP cost of 27. It fires 1 projectile per shot with a spread of .02. Has a 5-round magazine with a reload time of 3 seconds. Uses 1 ammo per shot. It weighs 8 pounds with a value of 4,100 caps and has an item health of just 80. Yeah, just all around a very versatile, very good long-range sneak attack weapon, or even close range if you're going through with a build like that with the Old World Blues implant and Tunnel Runner. You can get your crouch speed up to like ridiculous levels and zoom around shooting stuff. Alright, next up, one of the two unique variations of the sniper rifle. This one is going to be Christine's Circle of Steel sniper rifle. It's a silenced sniper rifle. I would consider this an S tier weapon. Either S or S plus tier. It's difficult to say. Honestly, I would probably just put it in S tier. Probably between All-American and Medicine Stick. If not there, probably the very top of S tier, going into S plus. You know what? No. It's gonna be the bottom of S plus tier. The only reason it's at the bottom is because it's quite delicate, and you know, it's only a long-range precision weapon. It's only silenced, and that's really a benefit overall, but some people might not like that. Overall, it's a incredibly good sneak attack rifle. You find it in Old World Blues at the Little Yangtze prison camp. It's just sitting out in the open. If you build it right, with the right perks, you're essentially getting an absolute unit of a gun. You know, better criticals, finesse. It already has a 2.5 times critical hit multiplier. But if you trick it out with even just like Bloody Mass extra 5% damage, and then you take both Black Widow and Confirmed Bachelor, or Lady Killer and Confirmed Bachelor, something like that, you can, you just deal plus 10% damage to all human enemies, on top of the much improved per shot damage. It's really, really potent. Whenever I'm doing a stealth archer playthrough of Fallout New Vegas, you know, it's the go-to. I rush it, pretty much. You know, I rush to get the COS silencer rifle because it's essentially the jack of all trades gun. You know, it doesn't have best in slot damage. You know, if you want that, you get the anti-material rifle, but that's extremely heavy and has high weapon requirements that you need to build around. The COS sniper rifle, you can just grab, slap on weapon handling, and kind of just get to it. So let's go with the numbers on the gun. It has a gun's skill requirement of 75, a strength requirement of 6, uses the 308 round. It fires. It deals 62 damage per shot with a DPS of 99.6. Has a critical hit damage of 62 with a critical hit multiplier of 2.5. Fires 1.6 shots a second with an AP cost of 38. Fires 1 projectile per shot with a spread of 0.02. Holds 5 shots in a magazine with a reload time of 3 seconds. Weighs 5.5 pounds and a value of 6,100 caps, and has an item HP of 85, which is probably the biggest drawback of it. It's got a very low weapon health, which is unfortunate. Let's move on to the other unique sniper rifle. I guarantee you, I'm going to be stepping on a lot of toes with this one. I mean a lot. The Gobi Campaign Scout Rifle. I put that legitimately below the hunting rifle. I don't like using it. It's not as versatile as a sniper rifle, And in its niche, that is an unsilenced precision long-range weapon, you have the hunting rifle, which has better spread, higher magazine, higher fire rate. I think it only does a little bit less damage at that. No, the hunting rifle actually deals more per shot damage than the Gobi Campaign Scout Rifle. The Gobi Campaign Scout Rifle, though, has extreme critical hit damage at 80. That is over its 48 damage. So essentially getting like 150% critical hit damage, you know. But in general, it's not that versatile. You have to use it at long range, and if shit goes south and you're spotted, you have to depend on getting a critical hit, which, if you have the wrong build, can be a bit of an ask. I don't think it's as useful as the silenced versions of these, since having that silencer really ensures your follow-up shot is going to be nice and quiet, and other enemies will not be alerted to your presence, whereas there are situations where, you know, with the Gobi Campaign Rifle, you can't really guarantee that. It is a lot more durable than the sniper rifle variants, but at the same time, it's just not, I don't find it as useful in as many circumstances. Like, there's a lot of times where I'd rather pick the hunting rifle or a marksman carbine over the Gobi Campaign or even the survivalist rifle. Right now it's kind of just sitting in my backpack, and I'm doing like an NCR, a straight up grunt, rifleman playthrough, and it's not really doing much for me. There's like a handful of scenarios where you find it useful, but those are few and far between, and it's difficult to justify having it in my bag. The numbers. Has a gun skill requirement of 75, a strength requirement of 6. It uses the 308 round. It deals 48 damage per shot. Has a DPS of 102.9. Has a critical hit damage of 80. Critical hit multiplier of 2. Fire rate of 2.1 shots a second. At an AP cost of 24. Fires 1 projectile per shot with a spread of .018. Has a magazine size of 6. A reload time of 3 seconds. It weighs 4.5 pounds with a cap value of 6,200. Has an item health of 160. I should mention that it is fairly easy to obtain. It is in a very hard locked gun case in a location called Sniper's Nest above Cottonwood Cove. As long as you have a 100 lockpick and you know where the location's at, you can just go in there and get it whatever level you may be. So that's one of the pluses of that. It's, there's not a lot of issue to getting it, but if you break that lock, you're screwed, by the way. Alright, next up. The Trail Carbine. It's a B tier gun, I guess. Probably above the Cowboy Repeater. Yeah, above the Cowboy Repeater, below the Bozar. It's not like crazy good, you know what I mean? But it's fine, I guess. You're gonna replace your Cowboy Repeater with either this or the brush gun when you get it. So, just one of those things where it's like, it's good, but it's definitely not like such a shockingly good weapon like the Cowboy Repeater. You know what I mean? You'd expect it to be like as good as it is, since it's a mid to late game weapon. It has a 1 modification, which which is the trail carbine scope, which adds it's a pretty low power scope. It's like a medium scope. A pretty low power scope to the trail carbine, which is fine, you know, it's kind of what it's there for. I say the only downside to the trail carbine is its ammunition choice of the 44 Magnum round. If you're playing in hardcore mode, this could be a good thing, but not everybody plays hardcore mode, and you know, a lot of the time you just rather have the damage of the brush gun as opposed to the trail carbine. It's not a bad gun by any means, you know, it works. It's a good all-arounder, but I don't know, it doesn't really blow your socks off like the cowboy repeater could do. You know, it's not like this big surprise. Typically you get it around gun runners, you know, when you go there. Alright, so let's hit the numbers on this. It has a gun's skill requirement of 75, a strength requirement of 5. It uses the 44 Magnum round. It deals 48 damage per shot, with a DPS of 73.8. Has a critical hit damage of 48, with a critical hit multiplier of 1. Has a fire rate of 1.5 shots a second, and an AP cost of 29. Fires 1 projectile per shot, at a spread of 0.06. Has an ammunition capacity of 8. A reload time of half a second per round. It loads each round individually. Be aware of the VATS glitch. Weighs 5.5 pounds, and it has a caps value of 3,900, and an item health of 500. It's just a solid all-around gun, man. Can't really complain. Alright, now we're getting interesting with the last two rifles, and after looking at my storage space on my hard drive, I will unfortunately have to split this up into more parts than I really wanted to. So this first part is going to be 1- and 2-handed guns, non-automatic, and then the next one's going to be SMGs and shotguns, and probably big guns as well, so be on the lookout for that. Alright, the second to last gun is going to be the varmint rifle. It's going to be a B-tier gun. Where would I put it out of this lineup of honestly fairly competitive B-tier weapons? Honestly, I might drop the Alabine Kid down to C tier, and then have the varmint rifle most likely, this is difficult right here, I'd say probably above the hunting revolver, but below the automatic rifle, or right below the service rifle, I'd say. No, probably not that high. Most likely probably above the two uniques. So below the 12.7mm pistol and above the long carbine. So you may be asking, why is it so high up? Well, it's modifications. That's really about it. You tack on the night scope. You don't even need the night scope. You tack on a silencer and the extended mags. It becomes a monster. You know, a sneak attack monster. It'll carry you pretty easily through the early game. Using it as intended, though, as like an actual rifle, is a bad idea. You need to use it from the sneak attack. Luckily, though, it is incredibly good from stealth, especially for the early game, and it will easily carry you all the way to getting its unique variant. Alright, but that's pretty much it about the varmint rifle. It needs modifications to be competitive. If you don't get those mods, it's a real garbage gun. So let's go with hard numbers. It has a gun skill requirement of 0, a strength requirement of 3. It uses the 5.56 round. It deals 18 damage per shot with a DPS of 21.9. Has a critical hit damage of 18 with a critical hit multiplier of 1. It fires 1.2 times a second with an AP cost of 35. It fires 1 projectile per shot with a spread of 0.024. Holds 5 rounds in a magazine, could be 8 with the modification. It reloads in 2.2 seconds. It weighs 5.5 pounds and is valued at 75 caps. It has an item health of 120. Yeah, that's pretty much it. The varmint rifle is serviceable, although it's strictly an early game weapon. Although its non-unique counterpart, the Rat Slayer. This is quite easily an S-tier weapon. The question is, do I put it above or below a light shining in the darkness? I think it'll hold up the bottom end of S-tier. The Rat Slayer is incredible, for what it is. It's got very low requirements. I mean, very low weapon requirements. Comes with all the modifications already attached. Has the highest critical multiplier of 5 times. Has a better magnification on the scope. And with the right build, you can ensure a critical hit with every shot. It is insanely good. With very cheap ammo that's everywhere. And it will probably carry you all the way to getting the silenced sniper rifle, or the Christina's silenced sniper rifle. You can actually, take down Deathclaws, fairly easily with this gun. It's highly underrated. You get it incredibly early in the game out of the Brock Flower Cave, south of the Highway 95 Vipers encampment, and east of the Legion raid camp, south of Novak. You do have to worry about the giant rats, though. They are kind of difficult to kill early game, and they can kill you quite quickly at the sort of levels that you will be at when you go and get the Rat Slayer. So, let's go over the hard numbers here. It has a gun skill requirement of 0, a strength requirement of 3, uses the 5.56 round, deals 23 damage per shot with a DPS of 30. It has a critical hit damage of 23, a critical hit multiplier of 5. Right? It fires 1.3 times a second with an AP cost of 33. Fires 1 projectile per shot with an AP cost of 33. It fires 1 projectile per shot with a spread of 0.02. Has 8 rounds in a magazine with a 2.2 second reload time. It weighs 4.5 pounds with a value of 2,000 caps and an item health of 200. Alright, so that concludes the first portion of the tier list video, and this is pretty much what we're looking at right now for the tier list. Next time we'll be adding on the submachine guns, the shotguns, and big guns to this tier list. So if you enjoyed the video, feel free to leave a like or subscribe to the channel, and hopefully you'll catch the next installment of this all weapons tier list for Fallout New Vegas.